G'day guys, back again, Brew Crew Chronicles here, smashing beers and talking nonsense.
Today I've got Black Rock's Hazy. So Little John brought this up. Go check out Black Rock's Facebook page. They're doing a really great experiment with the feedback that has come back from us brewing their Black Rock Hazy BIB, that the S33 hasn't been able to hold the level of haze of some other yeast. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. What are you drinking? I'm
suckling on the Black Rock IPA in the similar kit.
They're nice beers. It is a shame that the haze has dropped out of that one.
It is going to be very intriguing to see the results of this experiment.
Yeah, so they've done like 10 different yeast. One thing that
And it's Black Rock himself, isn't it?
Yeah, Black Rock themselves. And what I love is that they haven't favoured a specific brand of yeast.
No, they've got a plethora from like Blue Labs, Lullermans.
They've done Mangrove Jack.
Yeah, there's a load in there.
They haven't favoured anyone.
No, literally, yeah.
So it'll be a really great chance for us to see. They also have used a mix of dry yeast, liquid yeast. It'll be really, really fascinating.
Well, touching on that, touching on things that don't go the way that they're supposed to be going, we're going to start off today's episode with errors in home brewing. Things that we've fucked up.
Or things that we kind of have taken lesson from. It's not always a failure per se, but what have we learned?
I'll get in first digs on this.
He messes up heaps more than me.
That's because I brew a lot more. So we're going to touch on the ginger beer, hazy ginger beer mini mash I did. Now, Shaz put out a little short form video a little while back, gave you a little bit of a preview of it. Now, it's come out really quite light, almost lagerish. I might even go and pour a glass for it really quick and just show you guys the difference from what it should have been to what it now is.
Yep.
Now, I've done a little bit more research as it pertains to haze fallout. Now, one of the big things that I hadn't really taken into consideration, it being a ginger beer, there is no hops added to it. Now, there's something called protein and polyphenolic conversion pretty much. So it's the interactions between the proteins, which is obviously going to come predominantly from your rolled oats, and your polyphenols, which come from things like husks, hops, and so on. Anyway, there's a bioconversion in which that takes place, which is another reason why they state that when you're doing hazies and so on, you should be dry hopping and things like at high Krausen, because it's the most amount of activity. So I think that's the best conclusion in which that I've drawn as to why it's lost its haze. Also, yeast strain. You have to be mindful of the fact I used something that was a New World Strong Ale, so I think it's the M42, right, which is a very neutral yeast, and it's not formatted for haze in any way, shape or form. Again, the reason why I've done that is because I didn't want any crazy ester production being in a ginger beer.
Yeah, nice. On that, I actually had a comment on that little short form. I think it was on Instagram, and the suggestion was basically doing 10%. I should read it, but off the top of my head, doing 10% of it, doing a ratio of 2-to-1 oats to malt. So obviously you had a 2-to-1 ratio, but malt to oats. So that's something to look into and consider as well, switching that.
So essentially it was a 1 to 0.75 ratio. So I used a kilo of pale malt and 750 grams of rolled oats.
All right, I thought it was a 1.5 kilo of malt. Either way, like basically, his suggestion was to switch it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's something else to consider.
And that's the main reason in which that I ran the oat bill, in which the grain grist in which that I did, was because I'm so used to brewing things like Neepers and hazies. Yeah. It was just a formative way to convert it over. And again, it's a trial and an experiment. Like, this is how we learn and grow, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm sure it still tastes good.
It does. It actually tastes fantastic. Like I said, I'll grab a glass of it later on and you can have a lick of it.
So my one that I'm going to talk about is something that has also fueled my desire to do our yeast experiment. And that's basically doing a very simple mash and then testing over several yeasts. One thing that I did not know is how temperature, when you're brewing within a yeast temperature range, how brewing at certain areas of that temperature range so dramatically changes the taste of your beer.
Yeah, not just the temperature ranges in each yeast.
That's right.
Yeah.
So my first ever wheat beer that I did, I used Safale's wheat beer yeast. I brewed it very, very cold. I brewed it within the temperature range of the yeast, but way on the cooler end. When it got to tasting, the clove notes were so strong. That's not what I wanted. I like wheat beers that have more banana esters rather than the clove. And it is just that trial. There's nothing wrong with it. It certainly didn't end up the way I was hoping, but we harp on about brewing within temperature range because higher will give you off flavors, but we've never spoken about within the temperature range on either end the different flavors that come out. That's not to say it's for all yeast, but certainly for some.
It's a very valid point that you bring up there too, which is something I haven't really been very mindful of. And we always harp on about going, oh, you don't want to go too high in temperature range. But especially, even in some things like the NEPAs, it's really beneficial in some aspects, depending on the type of yeast that you're using, to brew in the upper echelons of the temperature range because you get a lot more of the ester production from the yeast. So if you're really chasing those crazy fruity flavours, it can be extremely beneficial.
Yeah, and it's just something that I never would have considered. Like, I really thought, I was very new to home brewing. I think it would have been within my first 6 months. Never experienced wheat beer yeast. All my lessons and tutoring came from Jace. And I was like, oh, as long as I hit between the temperature range, I'm fine. And when I produced a wheat beer, that yes, clove flavors are very prominent in wheat beers, but so are banana. And it really lacked the banana, which is what I tried to achieve. And so, lesson learned.
So my next one that we'll brush on, I think we've spoken about it a little bit before, was a hazy IPA I did a while back. Now, Shaz brought it to my attention more so than what I recognised it, and you speak on it as like a medicinal type flavour. That's
right. So we've been attending our local homebrew clubs meetings, and right at the very start of me attending those, I was really fortunate enough to attend their kind of off tasting meeting. And basically that's where they have an off tasting kit. And
I unfortunately missed that episode, but yeah.
Yeah, and they basically add those flavours into a very mediocre beer to help us kind of
ascertain.
Yeah, and get our palate used to these different flavours.
Yep.
It just so happened that medicinal Band-Aid flavour was one of those in that meeting. When I tried Jesse's hazy, I had said to him, I'm picking up this. It was on the nose. I could certainly taste it. It wasn't as strong as what I had before. I think also the meeting prior to us tasting that, we did have a fellow member produce a beer with that flavour in there as well.
Okay, yep.
Were you there for that? I swear you were.
I wasn't there for the...
You weren't there for any of it?
I don't believe so. I think that the initial meeting might have been my first beer.
Oh, possibly. Anyway, we digress. Jess didn't pick it up as much, and this just talks to the fact that all of our palates are so different. Jesse will be able to pick up flavours that are really prominent to him that go completely under the radar for me, and vice versa. Basically, and there is a specific polyphenol responsible for it. Did you want to talk more on this?
Now, I'll let you brush a little more on that because you're a little bit more well versed in it. Because I still haven't. And I spoke to the members of the meeting. Right, we are going to do another review on this at some point, so I'm going to sort of wait for that. My bit of research in which that I've done, again, being a polyphenolic taste, so it comes from polyphenols. Now, polyphenols inherently come from your grain, husks, or your hops. That is one thing that I did do in that brew that I had done in any of the past or previous was I dry hopped it after I'd cold crushed it. So there was no bioconversion from the hops and the yeast because obviously the yeast is now dormant, it's out of suspension. So that's one thing. If it is a polyphenolic taste, it's really going to rise to prominence because it's had no attempt to conversion. So again, these are just things we learn along the way.
So when we discussed this at one of my first meetings, it was described as a polyphenol that is created when there is chlorine present or in the presence of specific bacteria. Now, what is really not funny, but funny, is that both Jesse and the other member that had this taste present used filtered or RO water. So the most common reason for this flavour to be present is chlorine. So we took that off the drawing board. That wasn't an option. Then we went to the backup of bacteria. Jesse has brewed for a very long time. This other member has brewed for a very long time. And I think that it's fair enough to say that you're both using adequate cleaning products, adequate cleaning methods, and there was really nothing that we could pinpoint as an issue. Was it bacteria? Maybe. Like, we don't actually know.
It very well could be. And this is the thing that a lot of people need to realise too, is now I'm absolutely meticulous with everything. Since having made that beer, I spoke to the members of the meeting, gone home, deep cleaned all of my stuff, all the way from the grain father, the pump, phosphoric acid, boiled it out, redone everything, replaced my fermenter. There is also things like wild strains of yeast that attach themselves onto things all the time. It's very easy to introduce bacteria. Now, you can attest that the beer wasn't horrific. It was just, it had this flavour which stood out to you like anything. Now, so
you drank the whole cake.
I polished it.
It did not go to waste.
But it wasn't an off beer. It wasn't infected per se. And like Shaz said, it can be something as simple as a reaction of a polyphenol to something else.
Yeah, like, we actually don't have an answer. And when we were preparing for this episode, like I said to Jess, I think it's really important that we detail things that we've learned. Like, we don't necessarily have an answer, and there is anomalies.
Anomalies.
Yeah, it's a word I always struggle with. That do occur, and we don't have an answer for them. I had another message from a follower that has been a follower of mine forever. He messaged me 2 weeks ago and said, my keg won't carbonate. Like, this happened, this happened, this happened. It's now 2 weeks. He's like, hey, just an FYI, it still never carbonated. For some reason, the CO2 would not saturate into the beer. Yeah. No fucking idea why. Yeah. Like, he works at a brew shop.
Yeah.
So, like, he's not incompetent. No. Like, sometimes things just happen. Yeah. You know, and we embrace it. Some of us will drink it. Some of us just want to start it again. But it is what it is.
Right. Now, the next topic of conversation is we're going to brush on fruits in beer. The reason why Shaz is bringing this to prominence, I would assume, I haven't had a previous conversation with you about this yet, but is the one drops.
Yeah, I want to touch on fruit in all brewing, but certainly the one drop. I've seen quite a few different homebrew recipes of using fruit. And since I've been exposed to one drop and all the wonders that it is, it made me realise that if homebrewers are drinking things like that and trying to recreate it, they may be using methods. Now, I actually don't know how one drop achieve it.
This is one thing that I wanted to touch on really quickly. I have no idea either. Now, let me give you 3 quick examples as to what different variants might look for fruit in beer if you guys haven't heard of it before. 1, a sessionable pale with a light bit of mango in the wort. Next one is something, for instance, like passion fruit pulp in a Weiss.
Yep.
And then you have all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which I'm still struggling to ascertain how they managed to execute this so phenomenally, because they are phenomenal beers, is one drops, which is almost like, well, it's not almost like, it is pureed fruit.
It is a breakfast smoothie.
It literally is. And I don't understand how they don't get any of the bad things from the additives and execute it so well across the board in so many different platforms. Now, we're going to talk about a few good things about it and a few bad things about it today.
Just things you have to be mindful of. So, what's the first one you want to bring up? I guess I'll let you lead the way and then I'll follow along.
All right. So the first one that I would speak on is you have to bear in mind that you're adding extra fermentables. Now, things like fructose is going to be your most prolific fermentable from that. You have to be mindful of the fact that because it is so fermentable that you don't want to dry your beer out. What I mean by that is, in the same manner that you don't want to go adding a bunch of dextrose to a NEPA, because it's going to take away from the softness, the pillowiness, the mouthfeel of the NEPA. If you're adding too much fruit, it's going to dry it out. The other thing is too, through the fermentation process, depending on when you're adding, dry hopping, pitching your fruit into your mix, and whether it is throughout the fermentation process, is you have to be mindful of the fact that you might get wine notes from your yeast.
Yeah, and certainly I was always taught, now I don't know much about much, but what I have been taught is that fructose is a really common contributor to giving wine notes.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider. Now, I actually had, was it One Drops? It was One Drops Florida Wheeze, and I was so disappointed. Like, the smell was amazing, but the wine notes were super prominent. Now, there's some people who would love that. I'm not a wine drinker. Don't even bring a glass of me to Nift.
But it's the same thing as people using things like Nelson Sauvin in certain beers, where it gives wine notes. So people like certain things, and that's another thing we're brushing on today. Is people like what they like, and it's personal selection.
Yeah, and I think this is what really made me want to discuss this, because in the last episode we did talk about, like, you brought up like mead, fruit variants and mead and that stuff, and that's what sparked me to be like, hey, we should probably talk about this. Is I seem to be really sensitive to that really overripe, almost borderline rotten flavour that you get from fruit in beer. So there's been a couple of beers that I have tried. We won't name names, but I think that you'll know which ones I was talking about, that I got that real overripe, rotten taste. And it was almost like it had been like added into the mash or put into the fermentation process very early, where we got that aged for fruit taste. I want to drink a smoothie. Yeah. I don't want to taste fruit that's been sitting out in the fruit basket for 3 weeks and the fruit flies have got to it. Some people like that though, and that is also okay.
And that's the thing, like, speaking slightly outside of terms of brewing for a second, it's like people like blue cheese.
Yeah, thank you.
You know what I mean? It's just people have personable preferences when it comes to their palate, and it's completely fine. But yeah, not everyone has to like the things you like, and that's also brushing on while we're talking about fruit in beer. Do you want to talk about the chemistry for a little bit?
In like terms of pH?
Yeah.
Yeah. So majority of your fruit is going to be on the acidic side of things. So when you're adding this in, you're going to be lowering your pH and making it more acidic. So we've touched on this in terms of like the all grain and balancing out our pH to make sure it's in a range that the yeast likes. But certainly if I was adding fruit juice or fruit or anything like that if I was doing extract straight to my fermenter, or if, I'm assuming if you're doing all grain, you're adding it to the boil, it's going to be tested after anyway. But be super mindful, because if your acidity is too low, it is going to kill your yeast, and then you're not going to have anything.
No.
So that's all I had to add on to the chemistry. Does your big brain have anything else?
Big brain is running at a loss today.
The only other thing is, like, and you spoke about like the fructose drying it out. Obviously, the more sugar you add, the higher ABV you're going to achieve. So if you're adding fruit, like, maybe you don't need to add extra dex or extra grain, depending on what your style, like whether all grain or an extract or whatever. But keeping in mind that, the more fruit you add, the higher your ABV is going to be.
One thing that I should probably touch on really quickly too is the potential for haze production in your beer. If you're incorporating fruit, if any, your potential for haze is going to increase. Also, the end coloration of your beer also has huge potential to change. If you're going to be adding something like raspberries, it's a bit of a given.
Yeah. And I think anyone who's adding that stuff, they're probably expecting that. But, maybe this is like a new thing for you and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then it's a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah. So,
do you know what? Okay, what were you going to say?
I was going to jump to the last point.
Oh, no. Okay, what's your last point?
Rapid fire.
Okay, no, I have one more thing.
Yeah, shoot.
Pasteurising your fruit. Pasteurising...
Brilliant point.
This is why I'm
Told
here,
you,
guys.
big brains in the bin today.
So, obviously, you have to be super mindful. Now, if you're doing an all grain and you're adding it to your boil, you're going to boil off all the nasties, so all well and good. But if you're using, like, fresh produce into, like, an extract or into your fermenter during fermentation, don't skimp on making sure your product is free of any nasties. So, pasteurising, like, I think that's the process. I call it pasteurising, like, basically boiling, making sure everything is
Now, I'm a bit slow on the chemistry lessons, but I believe it's something to the effect of 67 degrees or something you have to raise it to. But pretty much if you just boil it, everything's dead. You say,
yeah, mate, just kill it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my only other thing. But I will actually also just make mention, because you also did talk about drying stuff out. Now, I come across a YouTube channel today. Anyway, I can't find it. It's something Wombat TV. And it was they were trying to do a lemonade from scratch. And, like a lemonade, alcoholic lemonade. And one thing that I saw that they did, I haven't actually completely watched the video yet, but they added lactose.
It's actually, it happens a lot. And people that I know that do ginger beers from scratch add lactose as well.
Yeah, and I just thought, I have never used lactose in that capacity, but I thought it's really good to bring it to your attention. Go check it out. What I'll do is, when we finish this, I will find their full name and I will put them in the description so you can check it out. I just thought, geez, what a great suggestion. There's obviously lots of people that want to avoid lactose, but for those who do not, what a great option of being able to put it in there. It's not fermentable, but you're still going to get that sweetness.
Speaking of lactose, I should probably tell you my oat cream's just finished up. I might have gone a little bit heavy-handed on the lactose. So there's going to be one ready. Next Brew Crew Chronicles episode comes out. We're going to have some. We're going to rip it on camera.
I can't wait. All right, rapid fire. I'll let you get to that.
I'm going to quickly run and grab one of these ginger beers out of the fridge. I'm going to let Shaz have a little lick of it, and I'm going to show you guys what I mean by the complete and utter lack of appearance of haze.
Oh, mate, this is crystal clear. I think that even when you brew the normal... So for those people who are watching the video version, you can see the normal haze.
It is.
The normal ginger is more hazy than
It's darker and hazier.
Got a few floaties in it, though.
Yeah, it could just be... could be anything, really.
Who knows? Anyway, we'll drink it regardless. All right, rapid fire. Who's going first?
I'll close out because mine's a little bit more
You're making fun of me?
orchestrated.
Okay.
Right, you go first.
All right, I've got to tilt this way because it's written over here. All right, fermenting under pressure, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Ale yeast in a lager style?
No.
For those who aren't temperature controlling? Don't call it a lager style then.
This is exactly right. Don't call it a lager. You said it's rapid fire, baby.
All right. Favourite home brewing yeast?
Verdant.
Perfect. Favourite hop?
Crush.
Yeah. Kveik yeast, yes or no?
No.
Ooh. And hydrometer or tilt?
Tilt for efficiency.
Perfect. All right, my turn.
All right. Bottle or keg?
Keg.
Force or saturation carb?
Oh, I saturate.
Favourite brewery?
Black Flag.
Least favourite hop?
Crush. Actually, that or Nelson, because I don't like the wine notes.
Right. High ABV or low ABV?
Oh, because I think I like high ABV until I get 3 schooners in, and then it's a bad move. So, like middle ABV.
Lager or ale?
Ale.
Session or NEPA?
Oh, fuck. I gotta go to session because I'm a lightweight.
Session or oat cream?
Oat cream.
Oat cream or one drop?
Oh, that's so hard. Can I have half of each? One drop.
One drop of gin.
Oh, fuck. It's gin.
Rightio, guys. That is absolutely it for us today. Thank you very much. Any questions, anything you're intrigued about, don't fail to mention it down below.
Yeah, and please subscribe, like, follow along. It really helps us kind of get this out there.
Beauty. Cheers.
See ya.